Hello everybody, Thomas Fleming again. Well, we're going to talk about the one problem that we all have and that we all have in common. Even Jesus had this problem. Yeah, he had a problem. Now, he dealt with it, which is showing us that we need to be able to deal with it as well. It's not just the way he dealt with it, the fact that he did deal with it shows that, like us, we're all tempted. The question is not how we're tempted, it's that we are. Just take it for granted we're going to be. And you have to deal with it as many times a day as you need to. Now, we've all got a weakness for something, a weakness for chocolate cake or for good-looking men and women, whatever the problem is. The new truck the guy has next door, whatever it is. We can be tempted. There's nothing wrong with being tempted. It's giving into it. And there's a number of ways that you can give into it. You can think about it. That's not going to help the situation. In fact, we're told that if you think about a woman, in this particular case, a woman in your mind to lust after her, you already have committed adultery if you're in a relationship already. So you can create, we talk about, well, it's nice to be able to dream, but a lot of times dreams take you where you shouldn't go because of what you've been putting in all day. Turn your TV on, for those that still watch TV. The TV show itself may be tempting. It may show you a part of life that you wish you had. Again, being tempted is one thing, giving into it is another. It's going to work on our weaknesses. When Satan tempted Jesus, it was after the 40 days and nights of fasting, not before. So he was hungry. So he was tempted with bread. Turn this rock into bread. Well, Jesus could turn that rock into bread, or he wouldn't have tempted him with that. Which is interesting that we're learning about things that he can do even though we didn't see him do it. How did he get the loaves and fishes at the seashore to feed everybody? Well, he can turn rocks into bread if he wants, but we don't know how he did this particular miracle. But that one was okay because God told him to do it. If God tells you to do something that's not against his will, that's the key. And it's okay. But if it's against his will, don't do it. Because it didn't come from God. Okay, we're going to look at one person in the Bible. The reason we have this Bible is to learn the difficulty sometimes of being a Christian. It's not easy. We have to deal with a lot of things. Things that in our limited lifespan that we have here, we may never have dealt with before. When you get to be my age, you've pretty much had to deal with everything at this point, so we have our list of things that we have to avoid because they're not good for us. I have a whole long list of food that I can't eat, that I might be tempted to eat. I'd love a big piece of cheesecake right now, but the sugar wouldn't be good for me. I'm not diabetic, but it's just not good for anybody. But worse than that, I'm lactose intolerant. But I would like to have a piece of cheesecake. Okay, well, I'm tempted, and I might think about it. But there's far more worse things that we can think about. But if you dwell on it, if you think about it all the time, you're going to fail. So the best thing you can do when you have something that you know you're really tempted by is to avoid anything that can trigger you to think on that subject, whatever it is. So we're going to look at, we're going to go back to Genesis. I'm going to start reading in Genesis 39. And as soon as I start, you're going to know what we're reading about. 39:1. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. Remember that. He's a Potiphar. He's basically a governor. An officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him to the Ishmaelites, who bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. I've got a reflection off of this. Let me turn a little bit because I can't see. Got the sun up there. Okay. The Lord was with Joseph, and he was a successful man. This is why the world resents Jews, because Jews are chosen, and they know that, and they're confident, and that confidence allows them to succeed. If you could just have that same confidence, you could succeed too. So it's not just them. And if we're a Christian, we're adopted into the family, so you can have the same benefit. All right. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all he did to prosper in his hand. If you are good, true, solid follower of Christ, or just plain Jew that has the promise already, people will see that. So Joseph found favor in his sight and served him. Then he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had he put under his authority. His brothers sold him into slavery, and now he's number 2 in this rich man's house, which means he has access to everything in the house, except for one thing, and we'll get to that in a second. So it was from the time that he had made him the overseer of his house and all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in the house and in the field. Thus he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate. He entrusted everything to Joseph. And Joseph was making him money and managing his affairs. He didn't even have to think about that. That's pretty cool. Now, Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. Some things that people have to deal with. That can be a burden. So for those of us that aren't, then we're grateful for that. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast longing eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Look, my master does not know what is with me in the house, and he has committed all that he has to my hand. There is no one greater in this house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me but you. Because you are his wife, how can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" Well, she was not a godly person by any means, as we're going to see here in a bit. So it was that she spoke to Joseph day by day, and he did not heed to her. He did not lie with her or be with her. But it happened about this time when Joseph went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house were inside, that she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran out. Sometimes he had to be tempted. Sometimes we just have to flee from temptation. That's our best bet. When I was learning my martial arts, the instructor told me the best thing you can do if confronted with somebody in a fight: run. You don't know what's going to happen. Someone's going to get hurt. Might be you, might be him. If he gets hurt, or I'm talking about if I'm fighting a male opponent, but it could be anybody. What's going to happen if that person gets hurt? Goes to the hospital. Nowadays, they arrest you even though the other person attacked and you defended yourself. It doesn't matter in these laws day and age. So again, best to run. And you don't know what this person can do. And street fighting is different than martial arts. Street fighting can be fighting dirty. You know, one martial arts instructor demonstrated the best way to get out of a fight is if you can get down to the ground without really being noticed, grab a handful of dirt, throw it in your opponent's eyes. Yeah, that's fighting dirty, but you're likely to win. All right. So he leaves his garment behind and fled outside. That she called to the men of her house and spoke to them, saying, See, he has brought into us a Hebrew to mock us. He came to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. And it happened when he heard that he lifted his voice and cried out that he left his garment with me and fled and went outside. Evil will lie. And not having any previous insight to her ability to lie like this, her husband believed her. But it was an absolute lie. If he'd have known the truth, he'd have put her in prison. But he didn't. But God turns evil into good every day. So she kept his garment with her, and his master came home, and then she spoke to him with words like these, saying, The Hebrew servant whom you brought to us came to me to mock me. The word is a little bit more serious than that, but this has been softened for the Bible. As I lifted up my voice and cried out that he left his garment with me, and I fled outside. So it was when his master heard these words, which his wife spoke to him, saying, Your servant did this after this manner, that his anger was aroused, and Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined. And he was there in the prison. Okay. Once again, Joseph has been forcibly put someplace he doesn't want to be. Hopefully he has experience now to know not to worry. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy, and he gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners who were in the prison, whatsoever they did. It was his doing. The keeper of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority, because the Lord was with him, and everything he did, the Lord made it prosper. Now we're going to see if we read on. We can go ahead and just cover this real quickly. But the Pharaoh, the Potiphar wasn't big enough, I guess, for God, so he decides to get Joseph promoted. So the Pharaoh this time has a dream, and his magicians can't answer it. And paraphrasing, Joseph had told the dreams to a couple of people that were thrown into prison very temporarily, a cook and a baker type. And when they got back, they forgot about their dream and Joseph until Pharaoh had one. And they said, well, we can't answer it, but we know somebody who can. And then they sent for Pharaoh. He, of course, answers it. You're going to have 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine, and you need to be storing up during the plenty so you can get through the famine. So they did that. It became true when the famine started hitting, and they could see that they were doing the right thing. He got promoted again. So here he is in charge of everything. And at this time with the famine, they've got all the stores. They're in good shape. Pharaoh's actually making a lot of money because he's selling the extra grain that they put away. And the story goes on that Joseph's family is struggling, and they have to go to Pharaoh to get grain. And who do they get grain from? Joseph. He's got a new name and a new wife and some kids and that, and so he looks like an Egyptian, I guess. So they didn't recognize him. It's been a number of years. You know, he's about 30. And the story gets where they get back together again. So the bottom line is, fight the temptation, and whatever the consequences, you will come out good as long as you continue to follow God. That is the key. We don't know the future. Only God does. For us to even guess what we'd like to have out of the future is somewhat silly, because what do we ask for? Are we tempted by the neighbor's new truck, like I said? Yeah. What's he paying for that truck? How much money is it taken out of his budget for that truck? By the way, this is not Gatorade. It was at one time. This is my Crystal Light. You can reuse food bottles if you clean them well. Never use a bottle that's been used for any kind of chemicals. I could put chemicals in this, but then I never use it for drinking again, because this plastic is somewhat porous. The way you can know that is put something like, drink your Gatorade, rinse it out. You could even put it in the dishwasher and smell it. You're going to smell the smell from whatever drink you had in here, Gatorade or Crystal Light. The smell goes into the plastic. And if you had bleach in there or an arsenic in there to put down for the rats, whatever you've got in there, it will be absorbed into the plastic and could be absorbed into you if you're not careful. If you have these around and these are for drinking only, mark them for drinking. If they're for poison, mark them for poison. Whatever you do, if you're going to keep them around and reuse them, mark them. You could accidentally grab the wrong bottle. Be safe. Think things through before you do them. That applies to our temptation. Think things through. There will be an outcome. If you don't give in to it, like Joseph, there could still be an outcome. That's not a reason to give in to it. He could have given in to it, but eventually he would have been a nice used toy to throw away, and he wouldn't have had a future. His choice gave him a future. There are all kinds of people in the Bible that have gone through terrible, horrendous things. In the end, if they stayed with God, had their faith in God, they had a great life after. Now, Job was an example that we have that we're not really sure too much about it other than it's a story in here. We're not really sure who wrote it for sure, but it's here. There are a couple of interesting books in here. Esther's another one. Doesn't even mention the word God or Jesus, but it's all over the book. Job. It's all over the book about God. Everything is focused on God. Satan tries to mess him up. Couldn't. God will never tempt you now that far. He won't tempt you beyond what you can withstand. So if you give in to temptation, it's your fault, not God's. Don't blame him, because he won't tempt you beyond what you can bear. Now, psychology and some other tricks that you can use, like I said, is don't dwell on your temptation. If you cannot stop eating chocolate cake, I'd stop going into the delicatessen where it's right there in front of you under the glass jar. I'd go across the other side of the street and walk past it. There's things that you can do that you're just going to have to know, depending on what your problem is, how to deal with it. Billy Graham, to make sure that there was, 1, no temptation, and 2, no accusation of temptation, never traveled in his car with a woman unless there was a third person with him. Now, I don't know if he was dealing with temptation or not, but he was certainly dealing with the innuendo that could be said. So by having a third person, he was completely free and safe to not worry about that. Now, even he sinned. We all sin. We all come short of the glory of God. That's natural. But don't put yourself in a situation that can leave you vulnerable. And again, it's you and God know what your problem is. I don't need to know here. I don't want to ever know. We can just, if you need prayer in that situation, just say, I have a unknown or anonymous request or whatever you want to call it. And we can pray. We can all pray for you. When everybody gets together and prays, we definitely have work that can be done that God will take care of. If you're praying by yourself, well, then you're not and you're not getting results, find somebody else to pray with you. And again, they don't have to know what your problem is. Just know that you need to pray. Pray about it every day. Make it a habit. Find a verse that counteracts whatever your problem is, and pray about it. People that lust after money, read your verses. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil. It's not the money, it's the love of money. So find your verse, find your catchphrase. If you can't remember it, write it down. Put it where you can see it every day. Put it on your desk, put it in the visor of your car. Everywhere you can find that verse, just pop it down and read it. Get into the habit. The whole thing that you got to do is build up a habit. If you've got a temptation, you've already given into the habit a few times, start reversing that. It's never going to be easy. It's not meant to be easy. If you can pull out of something like that, then it's something that God will be pleased with, because you have to fight your way out of that. Now, the way you fight is mental, not physical. As we look at Joseph, he didn't fight with his brothers when they threw him into the pit. He probably argued against the lies that were told about him to Potiphar, but he didn't fight him over it or her. He let things happen. You can deny things. If somebody's going to lie about you, your denial is not going to do any good sometimes. Maybe you can say, well, where's your proof? But the problem was, there was no proof for him. It was her word. And the Potiphar held her in high esteem. If he ever found out that she wasn't, and I'm sure he probably did at some point in time, because if she would be this way with Joseph, she'd be this way with the next servant. Could be. Our behavior does, we talk about karma as if it's out there on its own, but we do get what we dish out. You want loving kindness, and dish out loving kindness. Doesn't matter what you give out, eventually someone's going to respond in like, so you best be doing the right thing. And God will also reward you. God doesn't punish you. That's not where karma comes from. The world is full of evil ways that would love to get at every Christian. If you open up the door and say, here, attack me, I've gone against God, and go ahead and attack me, they will. So don't leave yourself vulnerable. Okay, things are going to start getting tough for Christians. I think we're going to probably get out of here just in time to be spared an untimely death, physical death. It's not that bad yet, but it's coming. I can't give you a date. I'd like to. I wish I could say it's soon. We've been saying this every year, and I'll say it again. It's probably this year. Can I back that up with Scripture? No. I can back it up by looking around the world. There's not a whole lot more fudge room left. Now, I mentioned that we're not being killed as Christians, and somebody said, well, what about in Africa? Yeah, they've been doing that in Africa for years. They've been doing that in Africa even before Israel was a nation. That's just the way they behave there. It's unfortunate. But it's not worldwide. Soon it will be worldwide. Soon all governments will be out hunting Christians and Jews. We're not there yet. And we may not get there while we're here. It may be after we're gone. Satan would be extra mad from Revelation 12. That one, he missed killing us. And two, that he gets thrown out of heaven. Some people say he's already been thrown out of heaven. No. It was in the book of Revelation for a reason. It's prophecy. now I see what keeps falling on my tent. I've got one of these starball trees above here, and they keep dropping on my tent with a thud. Okay, I just saw one do it, so now I know what the noise is. I'm sitting at a table that was rained on this morning, and it's dry, so we've had a good wind, which is still kind of blowing, but it's a cold wind. You can tell when it's a northern wind, and this one is definitely a northerly wind. I think it's coming down through the west again, going all the way down to like Arizona and into Texas, and then coming back up. It's that time of year. We're in February. This is typically the coldest month of the year. So I'm looking forward to summer. I've committed to do another Star Trek film in May up in Kentucky, so I'm looking forward to that. I'll go up there and go camping for a week and then do that film. That's fun. And they're editing the last one that I did now, so it'll be out in the next few months. It's a three-parter, so it's going to be, the first part might be out here this summer, maybe before. Take the rest of the year to get the rest of it out. These are fun. You get to work with friends and pretend. And these roles are usually, because it's Star Trek, they're relatively wholesome roles. Yeah, there may be fighting some alien, but the good guys always win. The old westerns, the good guy in the white hat and the black guy and the guy in the black hat. The good guys always win. I'm hearing the wind blowing over there in those trees. I'm on the southern side of this camp. Is that where I'm at? Southwestern side. I'm in a forest of, these are all hardwoods around me. The pine trees are in there. You can see the green, and they go up a lot higher. The pine trees over there, pine trees have pine beetle. And there's at least 20 trees on the ground from the pine beetle. And there's another handful that are up there that are dead that are waiting to fall. So I decided to come on this side. I can hear the trees over there as they're clanging. The wind's blowing them and they're hitting up the top. Even the healthy trees, that can knock a branch off. That can fall down on you, so I feel safer over here now that I know that I'm getting hit with star balls. That's those little things you step on. Where is one? Let me grab. They're all over the ground. If you're going to put your tent down on a site, kick all these out of the way. Even under the tent, they can be uncomfortable to step on. I also put a tarp down first. If you're going to do like I do and you go to a long-term camp, most of these things are designed for people who go out maybe once a week, maybe typically once a month for a couple of days. So they're not designed to last a lifetime. To some degree, that's why my last one went out. I think there was a slight defect in the zipper, but that's okay. They put it right, so I'm okay. But you got to take care of this stuff. It doesn't take care of itself. Don't force anything. If it's not going, figure out what the problem is and fix it. I keep getting my zipper caught in the guard. There's a water guard on the outside. And when it's wet, it sticks to the zipper, and you go to open the zipper and it catches it. So I just know now, from now on, the minute it starts to catch, back it off, pull the thing back, and get out. It means I got to, bend down, put my hands in, work it slow. If I was in a hurry, I'd kick the door out. Don't worry. If there was a fire or something in there, I'd kick the door out, and I'd get out in a hurry. But on a normal situation, sometimes I have to get in there and help. You just do what you got to do. That's the way life is. You do what you got to do. There are opportunities every day. You make the best of them, and God will take care of the rest. Till we meet in the clouds, God bless.